In the depths of a seemingly ordinary September night in 2020, a chilling revelation was about to shatter the peaceful facade of Birmingham's Crestwood North neighborhood, where beneath layers of concrete and carefully constructed lies, a dark truth had remained hidden for 5 long years. The clock had just struck midnight when a convoy of Jefferson County Sheriff's Department vehicles, their lights deliberately dimmed, crept through the shadows toward an unassuming suburban residence. The target of their silent approach was the home of Monique Blackwell, a 34-year-old elementary school teacher whose reputation for kindness and community service had earned her the trust and admiration of everyone who knew her. Welcome to True Crime Stories Archive, your gateway to the chilling world of real-life horror. Here, we delve into the darkest corners of humanity, unearthing terrifying stories of true crime that will leave you sleeping with the lights on. If you're fascinated by the complex web of human psychology and criminal behavior, make sure to subscribe and join our growing community of true crime enthusiasts. Detective Sarah Martinez led the operation, accompanied by members of the Birmingham Police Department's Homicide Unit. The weight of a 5-year-old mystery pressed heavily upon their shoulders as they prepared to execute a warrant that would finally bring answers to a case that had haunted the local community since 2015. Monique Blackwell, born Monique Thompson in Mobile, Alabama, had crafted an impeccable image within her community. As a third-grade teacher at Avondale Elementary School, she touched countless young lives, and her annual food drives for underprivileged students painted a picture of selfless dedication. Yet beneath this carefully maintained facade of benevolence lurked a darkness that would soon send shockwaves through the tight-knit Birmingham suburb. The charges that brought law enforcement to her door that night were devastating in their severity: second-degree murder, domestic violence, and accessory after the fact. These accusations were intrinsically linked to the mysterious disappearance of her husband, Jamal Blackwell, a 38-year-old construction supervisor who had seemingly vanished into thin air on a cool November evening in 2015. Delving deeper into the case that had perplexed investigators for half a decade, the disappearance of Jamal Blackwell initially presented itself as a standard missing persons investigation. Despite exhaustive efforts by local law enforcement, including countless interviews with potential witnesses and numerous searches of the surrounding area, the trail had grown cold, leaving investigators grasping at fragments of a puzzle that refused to come together. The last confirmed sighting of Jamal occurred at his workplace, Foster and Sons Construction, where security cameras captured his departure on the evening of November 7, 2015. The grainy footage showed him walking toward his gray Ford F-150 pickup truck, unaware that these would be his final recorded moments. 3 days later, that same vehicle was discovered abandoned in the parking lot of the East W Mall, miles away from the Blackwell residence, its presence raising more questions than answers. Detective Martinez, who inherited the case in 2018, began noticing peculiar patterns in Monique's behavior during the immediate aftermath of her husband's disappearance. The financial trail painted a particularly suspicious picture. Within just 5 days of Jamal's vanishing, Monique had taken the decisive step of closing their joint checking account, transferring a substantial sum to a newly created personal account. Even more telling was her decision to list their shared Honda Civic for sale merely 8 days after Jamal was last seen, actions that seemed incongruous with someone hoping for their spouse's safe return. The early morning arrest of Monique Blackwell in September 2020 became a media spectacle that would be forever etched in the community's collective memory. Local news station WBC Fox 6 News, with reporter Michael Chin at the helm, broadcast live as law enforcement led the diminutive teacher from her home. The sight of Monique, clad in pink pajamas and house slippers, being escorted to a waiting police vehicle, created a stark contrast between her innocent appearance and the gravity of the charges against her. In the wake of her arrest, the impact rippled through her family. Her 7-year-old daughter, Kiara, was placed in the temporary custody of Monique's sister, Patricia Thompson, a registered nurse at UAB Hospital. The community's reaction was one of profound disbelief, with neighbors struggling to reconcile the image of their beloved community member with the horrific accusations she now faced. The neighborhood response to Monique's arrest illustrated the deep cognitive dissonance experienced by those who thought they knew her well. Margaret Wilson, who had lived next door to the Blackwells for 6 years, found herself grappling with conflicting images: the helpful neighbor who would bring soup during illnesses and assist with holiday decorations, versus the woman now accused of a heinous crime. The Birmingham Police Department moved swiftly to address the media frenzy surrounding the case. Chief of Police Robert Anderson held a press conference that same day, where he confirmed that new evidence had prompted Monique's arrest. While remaining cautious about revealing specific details due to the ongoing investigation, Anderson made one crucial announcement. The case had been officially reclassified from a missing persons investigation to a homicide, marking a pivotal shift in the 5-year saga of Jamal Blackwell's disappearance. The judicial process began with Monique's initial court appearance before Jefferson County Circuit Judge Marcus Stewart. Standing composed in standard-issue orange prison attire, she presented a stark contrast to the elementary school teacher the community had known. Her defense team, spearheaded by prominent criminal defense attorney Samuel Jenkins, immediately established their aggressive stance by entering not guilty pleas to all charges. Jenkins, renowned throughout Alabama for handling high-profile cases, launched his defense strategy by directly challenging the prosecution's evidence. He argued that their case relied heavily on circumstantial connections and speculative theories rather than concrete proof. This set the stage for what would become a contentious legal battle. The bail hearing that followed became a testament to the complex nature of the case. Assistant District Attorney Laura Hopkins fought against bail, emphasizing the severity of the charges and presenting evidence of Monique's suspicious financial activities following her husband's disappearance. However, Jenkins mounted a compelling counterargument, highlighting Monique's deep community roots, spotless criminal record, and consistent cooperation with law enforcement throughout the investigation. Judge Stewart's decision to set bail at $500,000 reflected the delicate balance between the severity of the charges and Monique's standing in the community. Through a combination of property bonds and financial support from community members who steadfastly believed in her innocence, Monique's family managed to secure her release pending trial. The bail decision ignited fierce debates throughout Birmingham, transforming the case into a lightning rod for community discussion. The city found itself divided, with local religious leaders rallying behind Monique, while victims' rights advocates staged impassioned protests outside the courthouse. The Birmingham Herald delved deep into the case, producing a series of investigative articles that painted contrasting portraits of the Blackwells' relationship and family life through interviews with former colleagues of both Monique and Jamal. As the legal proceedings advanced, the defense team filed numerous motions challenging the admissibility of evidence and demanding access to investigative files. District Attorney Thomas Reed and his prosecution team fought to maintain their strategic advantage, arguing that certain details needed to remain sealed to protect the integrity of their ongoing investigation. These legal maneuvers created a complex web of procedural battles that stretched across months. Then, in May 2023, the case took an unprecedented turn that no one could have anticipated. During a hastily arranged press conference at the Jefferson County Courthouse, defense attorney Samuel Jenkins unveiled a development that would send shockwaves through both the legal community and the public. Kira Blackwell, Monique's daughter who had been just 7 years old when her father vanished, had come forward with a confession that would dramatically alter the course of the investigation. Now 15 years old, Kira provided a detailed account of the events that transpired on November 7, 2015. She described a household plagued by domestic violence, where her father's abuse had escalated from verbal threats to physical assaults. According to her statement, that fateful night, she witnessed another violent confrontation between her parents. Fearing for her mother's life, she claimed she had retrieved her father's registered handgun from his bedroom drawer and shot him once in the back of the head while he sat in his recliner. The confession included specific details about the weapon, the location of the shooting, and the events that followed. Kira insisted she had acted alone, driven by years of witnessing abuse and a child's desperate desire to protect her mother. Her account was delivered through her appointed guardian ad litem, Marie Foster, who emphasized the psychological trauma the teenager had carried for years. Kira's shocking revelation sent tremors through the legal community and forced the prosecution to re-evaluate their entire case against Monique Blackwell. District Attorney Reed announced that his office would thoroughly investigate Kira's claims while maintaining the charges against Monique, suggesting the possibility of a sophisticated cover-up following the alleged shooting. The Jefferson County District Attorney's Office found itself navigating uncharted legal territory as they weighed the credibility of a confession from someone who had been a child at the time of the alleged crime. The complexity of the case demanded expert insight, leading to the involvement of forensic psychologists Dr. Elena Rodriguez and Dr. James Miller, who were tasked with evaluating Kira's mental state and assessing the reliability of her memories from that period. District Attorney Thomas Reed faced mounting pressure to make a crucial decision: whether to pursue charges against a teenager for actions committed as a 7-year-old child. The prosecution team began investigating the possibility that Monique had manipulated her daughter into making a false confession to protect herself. They found it particularly suspicious that Kira's statement emerged only after her mother's arrest and the discovery of compelling evidence against her. Meanwhile, Monique's defense team, led by Samuel Jenkins, seized upon this development, filing motions to dismiss all charges against their client. Jenkins strengthened his position by bringing in child trauma expert Dr. Sarah Bennett, who testified that Kira's detailed recollection of events aligned with memories formed during intense traumatic experiences. The defense also unveiled previously sealed medical records documenting Monique's multiple visits to local emergency rooms for treatment of injuries, building a compelling narrative of domestic abuse. The case captured the attention of legal scholars and child advocacy groups nationwide. Professor Marcus Thompson from Harvard Law School published an analysis highlighting how the case exposed fundamental inadequacies in the legal system's approach to trauma-induced violence involving minors. The National Coalition Against Domestic Violence seized upon the case to advocate for reformed policies regarding children exposed to domestic abuse. The local media coverage intensified as new details emerged about the troubled history of the Blackwell family. Former neighbors stepped forward with accounts of hearing heated arguments and witnessing police responses to domestic disturbance calls at the residence. At Foster & Sons Construction, Jamal's former coworkers revealed a pattern of aggressive behavior that had resulted in multiple disciplinary actions before his death. The juvenile court system became deeply involved as questions arose about Kira's legal status. Judge Maria Hernandez appointed renowned child advocate attorney Grace Mitchell to represent Kira's interests independently from both her mother's defense team and the state prosecution. Mitchell immediately took action by filing motions to protect Kira's privacy and ensure any proceedings involving her would remain sealed. The investigation reached new depths with the involvement of the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. Special Agent David Cooper conducted extensive interviews with both Monique and Kira, analyzing their relationship dynamics and the potential influence of trauma on their accounts of events. His preliminary findings suggested a complex situation. While Kira's confession contained elements consistent with genuine memory, certain details raised questions about possible adult influence on her narrative. Public opinion remained sharply divided as the case unfolded. Domestic violence survivors organized rallies supporting Kira and Monique, while victims' rights advocates demanded justice for Jamal. The case prompted the Alabama state legislature to begin drafting new legislation addressing legal protections for children in domestic violence situations. A critical breakthrough emerged when Detective Sarah Martinez received an anonymous tip through the Birmingham Police Department's confidential hotline. The caller, whose identity remains protected, provided detailed information about suspicious activities observed at the Blackwell residence during the weeks following Jamal's disappearance. They specifically mentioned unusual nighttime activity in the backyard and the sudden construction of a recreational area shortly afterward. The anonymous tip prompted Detective Martinez to scrutinize Monique's previous statements with renewed intensity. Throughout multiple interviews, Monique had maintained that Jamal had abandoned their family after a heated argument, taking only his wallet and phone. However, a careful review of investigation records revealed significant inconsistencies in her timeline, with surveillance footage from nearby businesses contradicting her account of Jamal's movements on the day he allegedly left. On March 9, 2018, armed with a comprehensive search warrant, the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department, working alongside forensic specialists from the Alabama Bureau of Investigation, conducted an exhaustive examination of the Blackwell property. Their attention quickly focused on a recently constructed outdoor entertainment area featuring a fire pit and concrete patio. Using sophisticated ground-penetrating radar technology, investigators discovered anomalies beneath the surface. The decision was made to demolish the concrete structure, leading to a grim discovery that would change the course of the investigation. Buried beneath layers of concrete and soil, investigators uncovered human remains wrapped in industrial-grade tarp and sealed with construction-grade adhesive tape. The body was immediately transported to the Alabama Department of Forensic Sciences, where Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Michael Rhodes conducted a detailed post-mortem examination. Forensic analysis confirmed through dental records and DNA comparison that the remains belonged to Jamal Blackwell. Dr. Rhodes's report revealed that death resulted from a single gunshot wound to the occipital region of the skull, indicating the victim was likely in a seated or relaxed position when shot. Ballistics analysis showed the bullet was consistent with ammunition used in a .38 caliber revolver, matching the model registered to Monique Blackwell. The investigation team, now expanded to include members of the FBI's evidence response team, uncovered a pattern of premeditated actions following Jamal's death. Financial records revealed that Monique had systematically liquidated joint assets and methodically disposed of Jamal's personal belongings, selling his tools and work equipment through various online platforms, canceling his cell phone service, and closing their shared credit card accounts. Further evidence emerged when investigators interviewed contractors who had worked on the backyard renovation project. These individuals recalled Monique's unusual behavior, particularly her insistence on personally overseeing the concrete pouring process and her specific requirements about the foundation's depth. One worker noted her unprecedented demand for rapid completion, offering substantial financial incentives for finishing the work quickly. The forensics team made another crucial discovery. Trace evidence beneath the victim's fingernails included soil particles that matched the chemical composition of concrete mix. This finding suggested Jamal had contact with construction materials around the time of his death, directly contradicting Monique's claim that he had simply walked away from their home. State forensic anthropologist Dr. Sarah Chin's analysis revealed that the body's positioning and burial method indicated careful planning rather than panic-driven concealment. The grave had been precisely measured and lined with specific materials to prevent detection by cadaver dogs, suggesting premeditation and familiarity with investigation techniques. As evidence mounted, investigators began viewing the case through an entirely new lens. The discovery transformed what had initially been treated as a missing persons case into a complex homicide investigation with implications that challenged both the prosecution's original theory and Kiara's subsequent confession. The meticulous nature of the concealment raised serious questions about the validity of both Monique's initial statements and her daughter's recent claims. The trial of Monique Blackwell commenced in the Jefferson County Courthouse during fall 2023, with Judge Marcus Stewart presiding. The high-profile nature of the case attracted national media attention, necessitating enhanced security measures and resulting in a complex jury selection process that spanned 2 weeks. The carefully chosen panel of 12 jurors and 4 alternates represented a diverse cross-section of the Birmingham community. District Attorney Thomas Reed opened the prosecution's case with a powerful statement, methodically outlining how Monique Blackwell had orchestrated her husband's murder. The prosecution presented detailed forensic evidence indicating the shooting occurred while Jamal was in a vulnerable position, contradicting both the self-defense claim and Kiara's confession. Dr. Michael Rhodes, the medical examiner, provided crucial testimony about the angle and trajectory of the bullet, suggesting the shooter stood behind a seated victim, executing the shot with precision. The prosecution's case gained significant momentum when FBI financial analyst Jennifer Parker detailed a comprehensive timeline of bank transactions, property sales, and insurance claims that demonstrated premeditation. Security footage emerged showing Monique purchasing construction materials using cash at various hardware stores across Birmingham in the days following Jamal's death. Defense attorney Samuel Jenkins attempted to counter by portraying Monique as a victim of prolonged domestic abuse. He called expert witness Dr. Patricia Morrison, a specialist in domestic violence trauma, who testified about the psychological effects of sustained abuse. The defense introduced medical records documenting Monique's hospital visits for unexplained injuries, along with testimony from domestic violence counselors who had worked with her. However, a pivotal moment came when the prosecution played recordings of Monique's police interrogations. Detective Sarah Martinez testified about multiple interviews conducted between 2015 and 2020, revealing Monique's evolving story from initial claims of abandonment to later suggestions of self-defense. Her composed demeanor during questioning contrasted sharply with the evidence of careful planning discovered by investigators. The most dramatic testimony came from Kiara Blackwell herself. Now 15, she took the stand and recounted her confession about killing her father. However, under cross-examination by Assistant District Attorney Laura Hopkins, inconsistencies emerged in her story. Forensic experts thoroughly dismantled key elements of Kiara's account, demonstrating how the physical evidence, including the bullet trajectory and burial method, contradicted her version of events. The defense faced a significant setback when Judge Stewart ruled to admit evidence of Monique's internet search history from the weeks preceding Jamal's death. Records revealed queries about gunshot wounds, unmarked graves, and the effects of concrete on decomposition, creating a digital trail that severely undermined the defense's portrayal of an impulsive act of self-preservation. State forensic analyst Dr. Thomas Wilson presented compelling evidence about the sophisticated nature of the burial site. His testimony detailed how the concrete mixture used to conceal the body had been specifically chosen to resist ground-penetrating radar, suggesting extensive research and planning rather than a spontaneous response to violence. As the trial progressed, contractors testified about Monique's unusual behavior and specific demands during the backyard renovation project. The foreman of the construction crew described her insistence on personally supervising certain aspects of the concrete work, which he found peculiar at the time. The final days of the trial focused on Monique's financial activities. Forensic accountant Dr. Sarah Miller presented evidence showing how Monique had systematically transferred assets, closed accounts, and established new financial arrangements in preparation for life without her husband, all before his disappearance was reported. After 36 hours of intense deliberation, the jury emerged with their verdict. In the hushed courtroom, Monique Blackwell was found guilty of first-degree murder, with additional convictions for evidence tampering and financial fraud relating to the concealment of the crime. During the sentencing phase, Judge Marcus Stewart heard impact statements from both families. Jamal's mother, Regina Blackwell, delivered an emotionally charged testimony about the devastating impact of losing her son and the additional trauma of years of uncertainty. She spoke of the heartbreaking experience of watching her grandson grow up without a father while living with the knowledge that his mother was responsible for his death. Monique's family, including her sister Patricia Thompson, pleaded for leniency, citing her previously unblemished record and contributions to the community. However, Judge Stewart delivered a stern judgment, emphasizing the calculated nature of the crime and the elaborate cover-up that followed. He sentenced Monique Blackwell to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 20 years for the secondary charges. The judge specifically cited the premeditated aspects of the murder and the psychological impact on Kiara as aggravating factors in his decision. The aftermath of the trial brought new challenges for Kiara Blackwell. The district attorney's office faced the complex task of addressing her false confession. After extensive psychological evaluation and consideration of her age at the time of the events, prosecutors decided to pursue charges of perjury and obstruction of justice through the juvenile court system. The Birmingham Police Department implemented new training programs focused on detecting staged crime scenes and understanding complex family dynamics in homicide cases. Detective Sarah Martinez began conducting seminars for law enforcement agencies across the Southeast, sharing insights gained from the case. The impact extended beyond the legal system, with local domestic violence organizations reporting a surge in calls following the trial as the publicity surrounding the case prompted many victims to seek help. The Birmingham School District, where Monique had taught, established new protocols for identifying and supporting students living in potentially abusive situations. For the Blackwell family, the conclusion of the trial brought mixed emotions. Jamal's parents finally held a proper funeral for their son, 8 years after his death. They established a foundation in his name focused on supporting children affected by domestic violence and family trauma. Regina Blackwell became an advocate for victims' rights, speaking at conferences and working with law enforcement to improve responses to domestic violence cases. Kira Blackwell, now in the custody of her maternal aunt, began intensive therapy to address the trauma of her father's murder and her mother's conviction. Child psychologists noted that her false confession likely stemmed from a complex mix of loyalty to her mother and the psychological impact of growing up with the knowledge of her father's violent death. The case became a landmark study in forensic psychology programs across the country, highlighting the intricate relationships between domestic violence, family loyalty, and criminal behavior. The detailed planning of the murder and subsequent cover-up, contrasted with the attempt to present it as a child's desperate act of protection, offered valuable insights into the psychology of family violence and deception. The case's influence rippled through the legal community, transforming how law enforcement approached similar cases involving family dynamics and staged crime scenes. The meticulous documentation of evidence collection and forensic analysis became a model for future investigations, while the psychological aspects of Kira's false confession prompted new protocols for evaluating testimony from young witnesses in family-related crimes. This brings us to the end of this chilling true crime story, where a seemingly perfect facade concealed a calculated murder that devastated a family and community. If you found this story compelling, please like and subscribe to True Crime Stories Archive for more in-depth explorations of cases that reveal the complex nature of human psychology and criminal behavior. Share your thoughts in the comments below about what aspects of this case surprised you the most. Remember, behind every crime story are real people whose lives were forever changed. While we explore these cases to understand human nature and improve our justice system, we must never forget the victims and families who bear the lasting impact of these tragic events.